I don't know if you believe it. I don't even know if I believe anymore. I know this. There are things out there we can't understand, things that might make you scared or hurt you. I want nothing to do with them, and I'm sure you'd rather stay far away too. My little brother, Eric, can't seem to understand this. He's crazy, always was, and it gets me into trouble on a daily basis. I'm scared he's going to get himself into something that he can't get out of. This is the story of him getting too close, one that occurred around 20 years ago when we were living in South Austin, Texas. We had just moved there from Bay City. My parents, my older sister Eileen, my older brother Ben, who's autistic, and Eric, the youngest, and I were there. Back then, Austin was quieter, less crowded, and our new home was in a neighborhood near South First Street. It was old, single level, and it had 3 bedrooms. Felt like a jail in an old cowboy movie, but the neighborhood, I adored it. Huge trees covered everything. The woods stretched out in every direction, and a big creek, Ditmar, I think, ran right through it. And there was a park in the neighborhood. I would walk down to the creek by myself, sit on the edge of the water, and just unwind. My entire family enjoyed it there, especially Eric. He was 7 years younger than me, just 3 years old, but really smart. Never whiny, always easygoing. As a baby, he hardly ever cried, except for when he developed a fever so intense, we rushed him to the emergency room. At 3, he was already walking, talking, and using the potty, just like Ben, who did it early just to annoy our grandparents. Eric potty trained faster than the rest of us, simply observing and copying. That kid was wild and free. I was in the living room one day, watching Boy Meets World, a new TV show favorite of mine, when I heard Eric from our parents' bedroom. I had left Power Rangers on their TV for him, but it wasn't on. Instead, I heard whispering, then Eric talking loudly. I went in, curious. He was on their bed, staring at the mirror over the headboard. "Who are you talking to?" I asked, laughing a little. He turned, smiled big like he had been caught stealing candy, and said, "No one." I rolled my eyes. "Oh really? Liars don't get cookies." He jumped up, yelling, Okay, it's Chuck." Chuck was his imaginary friend. He made him up after Dad let him watch Child's Play. Any other kid would be scared of that hideous doll, but Eric, he loved it. He watched it every year for Halloween until he was 14, so I mocked him. "No, you were speaking to someone else." I hoped he would laugh, say who, and I'd shout "yourself" and throw a pillow. But no. His face stiffened and his eyes went wide. He looked hastily at the mirror and said, "I didn't tell her, I swear." My stomach twisted. "Who were you really talking to?" I asked, confused. He looked as if he were going to cry. "Mommy Ego," he whispered, pointing at the mirror. I stopped, then leaned in slowly toward it. Nothing. I squinted, stepped even closer. Then bam! A pillow hit my head. "Gotcha!" Eric shouted, jumping out laughing. I brushed it aside, irritated but relieved. The kid was always playing tricks. It bothered me that night. I asked Dad about it while washing dishes with Eileen. "Have you ever heard Eric mention a mommy ego?" He grabbed a soda and shrugged. "Yeah, it's one of his make-believe friends. He told me she was a secret or something. That didn't sit well with me. I could understand Chuck, but mommy ego? That sounded way too weird for a 3-year-old to just make up. I had to know more. The next day, I found Eric sitting in the living room watching TV. "Tell me about mommy ego," I said. He barely looked up. "She's the old lady in the attic." I blinked. "Our attic?" "No," he replied casually. "She doesn't live here. Chuck does. She just drops by and sleeps in the attic sometimes." My throat tightened. "Wait, Chuck lives here?" I whispered. "Yeah," he replied. He said this was his house. Mommy Ego visited him too. I felt sick. Where does she live then? He turned and looked at me directly. "Chuck says by the creek, near the dead goat skeleton. She sees you there by the big tree." I was cold. I spent a lot of time at that creek, by myself, under the same tree. Was he messing with me? Or was he following me? "Is she here now?" I asked. "I don't know," he said, watching the TV. "Check the attic and the garage. Come on with me," I urged. "She doesn't want me bothering her," he said. "Because she's not real," I screamed. He shrugged. That was the end of the conversation. Then things began to get weird. At first, it was small stuff. Faucets turning on when I got home, flower pots showing up in the bathroom, pictures slightly tilted. Then the big thing started. Chairs overturned, windows open, weird noises at night. I heard laughter sometimes, or soft crying, distant but real. The cookie jar kept breaking. Mum glued it, but then it broke again. We accused Eric of sneaking cookies, but one evening, it fell off the counter while he was at a friend's house. As we watched Unsolved Mysteries with Dad and Eileen, it crashed to the floor just as the show was talking about a plane crash. Mum still thought Eric did it, but Dad got quiet. He knew something was wrong. 2 years passed. We got used to it. Spooky, but no one was harmed. Strange, but it became part of life. Then, one afternoon, I went to the garage freezer to get a Hot Pocket, grabbed it, shut the lid, and felt like someone was watching me. I remembered what Eric had said about the attic. I looked up, just the crawl space hole, dark and empty. I shivered, flipped the switch, and started to leave. But when the room went dark, a glow flickered above. I turned around slowly. The attic light was on, dim and yellow. My chest tightened. I stepped back, climbed onto the freezer, and looked up. There she was, an old lady's face, smiling down at me, wrinkled like a prune, hair in a bun, no teeth, just black gums. Her eyes were yellow, with huge black circles where her pupils should have been. I screamed, ran inside, voice barely working. I avoided the garage for weeks. Every little noise made me jump. But then, 3 weeks, nothing. The house felt normal again. Then I met my friend JC. I asked if she had ever noticed anything strange. She had. Furniture moved, whispers in the night. I said, "Mommy ego," and she tensed up. Her little sister had mentioned her too. Said she had pulled a frisbee from a tree last year. JC was angry now. That evening, I fell asleep fast. I woke up to Eileen screaming. Our bed shaking like an earthquake was hitting. Mum and Dad ran in, and then it stopped. Mum brushed it off, but Dad took us seriously. Later, Eric visited me. He looked serious. "Mommy ego's angry at you." "Aye," he said. Then he turned and walked away. I was worried. Why me? The attic? What had I done? I had no idea. A year passed. We had a sleepover. School friends, Eileen, me. Movies, makeup, board games. A fun night. Eric pounded on the door at 10, furious. "Stop it! I know it was you at my window laughing." He stormed off. We hadn't done a thing. 2 hours later, I couldn't sleep. A soft knocking started on my window. Then it got louder. I thought it was Eric playing a joke. I yanked the blinds open, and there she was. Mommy ego. Hair in curlers, toothless grin, yellow eyes burning into me. I slammed the blind shut and buried myself under the covers. Tapping started. Long, sharp nails on glass. I hid until I passed out. Another year. Dad got a promotion. We moved. New house, fresh start. The last few days in that house, storms hit hard, floods, tornado warnings. We packed slowly, rain pounding outside. Last night there, I couldn't sleep. I was excited for my own room. Then I heard the front door shut. 2:30 a.m. I ran out and saw Eric sprinting down the street. Barefoot, I chased after him. He ran into a dead-end street, then disappeared between houses, heading toward the creek. I followed, almost slipping down the hill. And then I saw him, standing by the water, with 5 pale kids in soaking wet, ripped clothes. They had cloudy, lifeless eyes. I blinked, and suddenly they were gone. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "I don't know," he whispered. I pulled him home, in silence. Weeks later, in our new house, a storm knocked out the electricity. I lit a candle, read a little, and fell asleep. Mum woke me up in the morning. She looked pale. She told me JC's sister drowned in the creek that night. She had snuck out and got caught in the flood. My heart stopped. Those children by the water. Her sister had been one of them. And Mummy Ego. I believe she is the thing in the woods, luring kids away. And I believe she wanted Eric next. I still dream about her eyes. We got away, but I don't think she's done.